What up, my PT peeps? One Eye Bri back to talk about The Walking Dead and do a discussion about Daryl and Dwight. Both stay alive on the show or what? Spoiler warning if you're not up to date on the show, the comics, just general spoiler warning about Daryl and Dwight. Don't want to ruin it for you guys, but here we go. Now, like I said, spoiler warning about Season 7 and really the comic and really all together about Daryl, Dixon, and Dwight. So what do you think of Season 7 so far? I think it's pretty good. It's not great. The second part of Season 7 is titled Rise Up. From the trailer, I'm guessing that's what they're going with. Rise Up against Negan. And does that mean who's going to rise up? You got Rick, you got Daryl, and you got Dwight. Most likely would be the ones that would rise up. Now, if you know the comics, Dwight is a big person against Negan and a huge storyline. But Daryl Dixon is not in the comic, but he's on the show. And some would say that Daryl Dixon is the original Dwight based on the show being first, then the comic. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Daryl's come a long way. He's a fan favorite. He's one of my favorites, that's for sure. People love him. People dislike him, I guess. I don't know how you could. But Daryl's a badass, and we finally got him back to badass Daryl at the end of Season 7, Episode 8. Good to see the gang back together. He looks like he's going to cry here. Jesus looks pissed. But Daryl, Rick, great moment. Now we need more moments like this on his bike. He's got his bike back, and I can't wait to see it. But let's talk about Daryl Dixon a little bit. He is pretty awesome. He just renewed his contract for Season 8, so he'll be there at least for Season 8. Both him and Rick up their renegotiations, and they make more money, which is well deserved. But Daryl is awesome, and I don't see him ever leaving the show ever. I think he's going to be one of the last survivors, and I think he should be. He is built for this world. He's an awesome character. He's not in the comic, so he's just relied for the show, so you can't say, oh, he had the comic this, he had this. So I think he's a badass all the way around. We got to get his crossbow back. But he has been around forever, and I think he's going to last that way too. Now, I don't think he's going to have the storyline of Dwight. I think he's going to be going against and fighting the Saviors the entire time. So Daryl and Dwight are different in a lot of aspects, but I think Daryl and Dwight, they might not be able to survive in the same universe, because on the show, you have both of them. In the comic, it's just Dwight. The Dwight show and the dynamic with Rick and against the Saviors and Negan is different. Now, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But ever since we met Dwight, he's been a pain in Daryl's ass. And Daryl has to get even with him. You know, for all this, for Easy Street, for being tortured, for just everything. And he escaped. Did Daryl escape with the help of Dwight? Was it Sherry? I just don't know. And the Dwight backstory was pretty interesting that it linked both of them together anyway. But Dwight is a big character in the comic, and for those who don't know, he could and most likely will have a huge storyline coming forward against Negan, and we kind of need to see that because it sets up a lot of things in the world of The Walking Dead. Dwight isn't the best guy, but if he does and sticks to the comics, he is pretty good. Now, did he help Daryl? He was missing in the whole episode when Daryl escaped, so in Episode 8. So is that a big clue that he wasn't there, that he set up Daryl? Hopefully we find out who wrote the note and who helped out, and hopefully we do get some information about that, because I would like to know how he got away and who helped him. And Daryl being a prisoner changed his outlook now too. He's probably just want to kill the Saviors, no questions asked, and I don't, fault him for that. But Daryl and Dwight are linked together going forward, that's for sure. But only time will tell if they do the storyline from the comics. And let's talk about Dwight a little bit. Now, Dwight has got his wife, or his ex-wife, Sherry, whatever you want to call it, rubbed in his face every which way possible by Negan. And how many times can you see this, where Sherry is with Dwight, or Sherry is with Negan, and Dwight's got to see it? Now, Dwight was in the comics May 30th, 2012, issue 98. That is, years later after the TV show. So the TV show was October 31st, 2010. So it came after the fact. So Dwight is after Daryl Dixon. Daryl Dixon was first. A lot of people think that Dwight was first and then Daryl was kind of a clone of him. But it's the other way around. Dwight is a comic version of Daryl's look. A lot of the face besides the iron, of course. But the big thing I want to talk about is, can Daryl fill Dwight's role? And what do I mean by that? Is Dwight's role basically taking over the Saviors and going against Negan. I love this comic book rendering here. There is no comic on the right of Daryl. That's Dwight on the left and Daryl on the right, and that's the comic book version of it. But the big thing I want to talk about here is, will Dwight be at the Kingdom in the second part of Season 7? And only time will tell when we finally get it back in Sunday, February 12th, when this is the big scene right here. Does Dwight come around the corner? Because in the comics, it's not this many people by any means. It's Michonne, Rick, and Jesus and Andrea go meet Ezekiel. But in that, Dwight comes around the corner and Rick is pissed. I could see Daryl being pissed too. And if Dwight doesn't come around, does he do something else to help the group and connect the groups eventually? Because Dwight in the comic needs to be setting up to go against Negan. He has to trick them because he takes over the Saviors. And that'd be a huge difference if that didn't happen. They are sticking with the comic book here. They traded out Michonne for Carol with Ezekiel. So I would think they stick to the comics. And Dwight goes against Negan and becomes an ally to Rick after the war. Because you have to have all that war, and Dwight's probably like, we got to see whose side wins first, so what you want to do. And of course Rick has to win, you know what I'm saying? So does Dwight happen? Only time will tell. Tell us what you think. Brand name Daryl Dixon, great value. Dwight, what do you think? And we talked about this a little bit in our second half preview of that. Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out to see what some of the second half brings to that. And we talked about that because Dwight is only scheduled, that we've seen from the Spoiling Dead fans, to be in episode 11 and 16 in the second part of the season. So we'll see if he's in episode 9 when Rick and them go to the Kingdom. So I can't wait to see that, guys. Check out our Walking Dead community page on Facebook. Let us know what you think of Daryl and Dwight, if they can both be on the show at the same time going forward. Thanks, guys. Let us know what you think, and you guys are awesome.